Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 404 of the Running Rogue podcast. This is your host, Chris McClung, joined by co-host James Dodds. We're going to be talking about another very important run of the week, the medium long run. Last week, we talked about the long run. This week, we're talking about the medium long run. Personally, I call it the unsung hero of building fitness. And it may not be something that people naturally think of when they think of components of building to a fast race or hitting a goal, but they should be. So we're going to talk about it today, get into the what, the why, the how, all the good stuff about the magic of the medium long run. Before we get into that, or at least as an entry point into that discussion, I want to ask you a question, which doesn't have a right answer, but I'm curious what you would say to this question, which is simply, what is the most important run of the week?
I know you said it doesn't have a right answer, but of course I want to get the right answer. I've always been split, and I forced myself into a corner to pick, but I've always picked that it was, a catchy way to say it would be the next one. But I have forced myself into the corner of recognizing the power and the importance of equality, and then the power and importance of a long run, and seeing those as two of the biggest, I guess, high priority stimulus that you want throughout a week. And then I think because I've forced myself into the window and had to pick, I was like, if I must, it's the long run. But they pair together so well that it's hard to, I just think of those as like, you got to have both tools. But how do you come at that? Because I know there's a reason why you asked.
Well, I think, to me, I can't help but bring the medium long run into the conversation. And the way I think I would answer it is the most important run of the week is the run you struggle completing the most, And I think because of the way most people are wired and the way training curriculum is written and programs are written, the quality run and the long run get all the attention. And in some ways, those are the easiest to pull off because you put them in bold on your calendar. You know they're important. If you're doing a marathon, you're like, I got to do my long run. So it kind of comes with it, or comes with this excitement, this built-in motivation to get it done, and also this obvious pairing of importance with executing it, right? And so those two, in some ways, are the easiest. Not to say 20-mile long runs are easy, but you kind of build yourself up for that. You're motivated to do it. You plan your week around it. Those things kind of get done no matter what. But I think all of us in different ways have runs that we struggle completing and being consistent with. And a lot of people, I think it's the filler runs, maybe the recovery runs for some, maybe the medium long run for others. And then that becomes the run that becomes most important because it's the one holding you back. I remember I had a cycle one time where I was really struggling with my recovery days, getting them in. And the primary reason was because I had sort of people lined up to run all the other runs with, It's like, all right, I got built-in company, all the other runs. And it may have just been one recovery run. I think it was Wednesday. My Wednesday recovery run was the one that I was struggling with because, I would coach Wednesday morning, which is my in-person coaching time at 5:30, get done with that about 7:30, kind of have that need to decompress a little bit from that change, et cetera. Sometimes it might be cold out. And then I got to go out by myself at 8 a.m. to go get a 6 to 8 mile recovery run in. And those runs became the hardest for me in that cycle, particularly because I didn't have any company. I didn't want to do it. It was off. It was out of routine, essentially kind of shoehorned in versus the first thing I did in the day. And I remember in that season, I actually created a bit of an advent calendar for those runs over the final weeks, where it was like, okay, I've got 10 more weeks, whatever it was. I've got 10 more of these Wednesday runs to do. and I was counting them down. And so that became a way for me to hold myself accountable and recognize that, hey, that was going to be the toughest run for me to get in. But yet important because it was that recovery run post quality most often. And so in that sense, I think the medium long run can become that Achilles heel for some people in terms of getting it done.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we'll talk about the what and the why of the medium long run today, but it's that secondary long run, that second longest run of the week. And oftentimes, especially in our programming, it's a run. If you're training with us in person somewhere, it's a run that you have to do by yourself. And it's a run that's not sexy in that it's not the long run. It's not the speed stuff. It's just an easy aerobic, capacity building run that I think some people let fall away because it's not front and center.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that sense, if that's something people struggle with, then I think it can be perhaps their most important run because it is so formative for the whole puzzle. Now, if I were to answer it purely based on the science and the physiology, I think I would say long run with you. Mm-hmm. But if I were to incorporate the psychology and the routine and the scheduling and getting it all in, I think the medium long run might be the one for most people that is that weak spot.
I have two responses to that. One, I think it's incredibly rich because, yes, it's like drawing in anybody that's kind of focused, committed, they know they're going to hit 2 runs, they'll get those. So it's like a great question already to throw on the table to listeners of like, which one do you struggle with the most? And then your anecdote also reminded me of like early training with Rogue. And yeah, it was medium long run. As a coach, I've always done a really good job of encouraging the medium long run. But it's because it was to your point, it was one of my biggest blockers. So the lesson I took from it was easy to pass on as a coach and really emphasize it and tried to stress the importance in athletes' minds. But it's because, yes, I have vivid memories of you were listing the reasons it's not as sexy as the long run. It's not as fast as the quality, but it's also during the week and you're hyper aware of how long it takes. So you're like, wait, I've got to, your brain, even when you try not to calculate, starts to, or I should just speak to myself. I would calculate and be like, shoot, like if I had to just get up right now and just knock out a 5K as a recovery run, I would do it. Like I love that quick hit. You get some dopamine, all that. But when you're like, all right, wait, it's 90 minutes and it's a Thursday and I have a busy day. And that's when you start running into blockers.
Right. Because that's the other wrinkle. It happens during the week when you typically, right? During the week when you've got all the other things competing for your time versus a long run. It's like, oh, it's the weekend. I've got the whole day and I can coordinate around it. So anyway, I think it becomes one of the more challenging runs. So then let's dig into it. What is the medium long run? So we'll start with the what and the why. What is the medium long run? It's ideally the second longest run of the week. You build it to that anyway. You're building it to the second longest run of the week. There's a lot of programs that emphasize or prioritize doing 2 quality workouts, 2 speed workouts a week. And we would say, no, you need 1 speed workout, but your secondary challenging run during the week should be a medium long run. It's a run that builds, up to probably 10 to 14 miles for our experienced athletes, might be 6 to 10 for those that are building and at lower mileage levels currently. And so it's building to that higher level, becomes your second longest run of the week. And it's also typically an easy conversational run that's helping you build aerobic capacity, just like the long run. And as I said earlier, it I think becomes this unsung hero of particularly marathon fitness, but really of any fitness, because you're getting that really rich, formative aerobic capacity building stimulus, especially in those later miles of the medium long run. So that's the what, but what's the why? What would you say is the purpose of that run?
I think, like, to back up, it's rooted in a lot of what we talked about last week about the long run, but everything about distance training has to do with oxygen out of the sky, into the lungs, into the muscles. If you were to ever just oversimplify and say, what am I doing when I'm training? Like the best answer I think there, that's the most simple, is teaching my legs how to get oxygen. Like that's the name of the game. And so that's why we have so much emphasis on aerobic base building. So then the more, I think a simple logic flow that I could present here would be like, okay, well then if we have an opportunity, we know we're giving them the quality, that's going to change things biochemically, muscularly, all of that. And we also have the long run and we're hitting it there. So then why this one? It's like we have that third day and you were comparing to the people who do double qualities, et cetera. For us, we're saying, can I get a second stressor? I like the word stressor because you stress the body, let it heal, it gets stronger. And so it's like that secondary stressor, what do we want it to be? That fork in the road, we answer, well, we want to further support aerobic development. And so we're going to pick the stress that takes them a little bit longer and emphasize this concept of a medium long run to get that secondary hit, because it's not only in that run that you're getting benefit, but also because that run is taxing in that way, the rest of your week or wherever it fits in, it raises the overall stress load for the total week combined. And so I think we've always landed on this idea of like the medium long run is so important, and it needs to be emphasized because it's a secondary stressor for the endurance component, the aerobic component, the getting the oxygen to the working muscles.
Yep. And at a minimum, I think in this conversation about what's more important, you know, you talked about the long run and the quality. I mean, the medium long run is kind of the third leg of the stool, so to speak, right? You've got the recovery runs in between. Those are going to be 2 to 3 other runs, sometimes 4 for some people that are kind of easier and typically shorter. But the primary pillars, the main legs of the stool are, yes, the speed workout and yes, the long run. But give me the medium long run at least as an equal in there, because it is so formative in building that aerobic capacity, that aerobic development, helping remodel, as we talked about last week with the long run, remodel the inside of our body from lungs to bloodstream to capillary beds to inside our working muscles so that we can take oxygen from the air, take it to our legs and make our body go. And, you know, going back to the car analogy we've used before, you're with this run, just like you are with the long run, you're building the size of your engine. You're adding cylinders to the engine, and you want a really big, many cylinder engine because that's going to beat a smaller engine every day of the week, even if that engine is really revved up and fine tuned. So we're adding cylinders with the medium long run. Really, really important. So now let's talk about the tactics. We've got kind of 6 questions to answer here in terms of the tactics and the how-tos of the medium long run. First being, where does it fit? Where does it fit? And I believe we've talked about this before, but it never hurts to re-emphasize the placement of this run. But what would you tell people? Where does it fit?
As in the week?
Yeah, in the routine.
I feel like I can't go into that without explaining this idea of spacing, and we do a good job that we do include this in the book. So there's extra language there as well. But I got to come out. I got to present a little something. I guess like it's like I look at the 7-day cycle, the 7-day week, as we can now look at it as like a little jigsaw puzzle. And I like that you just use the language of the third leg to the stool. So now that you have your 3 legs, you're like, wait, I'm playing with 7 days, 3 of which are the high stress days. I need to lock those in and space them, meaning they none of them should be on back-to-back days. So it doesn't matter the day of the week that someone does it. Rather, like someone might do it on a Monday and then follow it up with their quality on Wednesday and their long run on Saturday. And I use that example because I coach a Wednesday night team, and anyone locally running on the Wednesday night team, they just fall into that pattern naturally because they have their support here. But someone could, if they move their long run to Sunday, well, then they might need to bump their medium long run because you got to think about how it hits the coming week as well. So as long as there's a recovery day, a cross-train day, or an off day in between these 3 pillars or legs of the stool you mentioned, then it can go anywhere. We just don't want you to do your medium long run where, let's say, the soft tissue is a little bit inflamed, and then, a recovery day would be perfect and you're stronger for it, but instead you do your quality the next day and you rip some fast 200s, and that's when you just put that double stressor back to back and it causes issues. So spacing is the answer, and I'm sure you'll clear that up a little more refined.
Right. At least a day apart. basically. Where does it fit? At least a day apart from your quality day or your long run day. And, the examples that we use in our programming, because that's how our classes are structured here, at least for in-person, is for that person who's doing their quality Wednesday, typically they'll do their medium long run on Monday. So you have that one day in between. Then Tuesday becomes an easy or cross training or off day. Then they're doing their long run Saturday. Or alternatively, we have some people that have their workouts Tuesday and they're doing their medium long run Thursday and then their long run Saturday. So again, at least one day of space in between. And, there aren't infinite iterations, but when you have 7 days a week and you can choose where those go, there's many, I don't know what the stats are, but a lot of iterations of how this could be constructed for you. But it's important that you establish a routine and that you have at least one day in between the medium long run and the quality, or the medium long run and the long run. You don't want those back to back. So yeah, that's a good way to put it. But there's kind of not infinite, but there's a lot of possible iterations depending on what your schedule looks like and what's optimal for you. But find a place for it. And one thing that we emphasize when we talk about routine is that you may not have what you would call a medium long run yet. Maybe you have the right number of runs, but one of those is a 4 miler and that's the day that you think is going to be your medium long run. Okay, great. Let's label it that way. And then let's build that 4 miler over time to be that medium long run. So it doesn't have to be that now, but if you label it that way, set that aside as the day for you for it, and then you build it over time, and we can talk about how to build that over time here shortly, then eventually it will be your medium long run. And you want it to ultimately be that second longest run of the week, even if it's not there yet. So where does it fit? Wherever it works for you, but at least one day apart from the quality or the long run. And then the next question becomes how long. Embedded in this, I want to talk about how do you build it, but what do you say when people ask, how long should my medium long run be?
Well, what we put in the book is 50 to 75% of your long run, and I do think of it in relationship to the long run. So I'm always thinking, could I inch someone up, as the long-term play to about 75%? But this is where numbers and exact math start to break down, so I don't want people to get too stuck on that. I'm glad we have a wide range in the book. But what I want to say is that what you just mentioned, I think of it as earmarking, earmark the day. And because what that does is it lets you know your plan is to grow it. So if I'm starting someone completely from scratch, my floor minimum is 4 by 30 minutes a week. And so for the first 10 weeks with that person, the quality day and the medium long run day, they're only growing by a little bit each up week, and then we're still taking down weeks. So on those days, it's maybe the same as the quality because that's where they're at. But of course, if it's you gave a good parameter earlier, 10 to 14, I've had, I know of an athlete that's done up to 16, but I usually 14's about where I've maxed out some of the top folks that I've coached. But where I'm going with this is it's where you are, and that earmarking concept is so huge because you know you're going to grow it. And I think that if you find yourself in a spot where your medium long run is about 50 to 75% of your long run, then you know you're working with good directional cues and you're in a fairly healthy spot. As opposed to pinpoint, there's not some magic number that everyone should run 12 or else.
Yep. This is where I also like to remind people, oftentimes we get stuck on this question of how many miles per week should I be doing? And obviously you should be paying attention to that and tracking it. And as we've talked about, a rule of thumb from one cycle to the next is that you shouldn't build by more than 20% from one peak mileage to the next peak in the next cycle as a rule of thumb, roughly. But I think sometimes lost in that discussion and lost in the 10% rule discussion of building from week to week is the concept of how do the miles fit together? Because you also want to be looking at the individual days, figuring out what makes sense for each day, and probably doing that first in primary, and then putting it all together and seeing, okay, how does that all add up? And does that check? Is it too much, too little? Do I need to go plus or minus on certain days in order to make sure that I'm not building too quickly? And so that's where I want people, as they're thinking about building a plan or a cycle, to say, okay, for each individual day, what are my goals and targets based on where I'm at previously for that individual day, and what the goals are for this specific race to build to. If you're doing a marathon, obviously you're thinking, I'm going to get up to 20-mile long runs. So that becomes pretty programmatic. If you're doing a half or if you're doing a half marathon, it might be 14 to 16 miles you're thinking about in your peak. And then from there, you scale your medium long run off of it. You scale your quality off of it, which should also be about 50% of your long run. And then the recovery days kind of flow from there as basically plugs to get to that total mileage a week that makes sense for you. But I want you to look both at the total, but really build it up from the ground up and say, okay, what makes sense for this individual run in this cycle? See how that all adds up. Does it make sense altogether? And then adjust those individual days if needed accordingly. And so, for somebody who's new to the concept of medium long run, maybe they're thinking, well, if I could just get to 6 miles with this cycle, because I've never had a 6-mile run in the middle of a week, then great. And then the next cycle, you go for 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
If you're already at 6, you're like, all right, can I get to 8 in this cycle? Or if you're at 8, go to 10. If you're at 10, try 12. If you're at 12, get to 14. But think of that as in you're building from cycle to cycle, those medium long run peaks, so that you can consolidate the gains from each and you're not overwhelming the system by doing too much too quickly, if that makes sense. So, So how does it fit? How long should it be? It's really in relation to where you've been in the past, and take that next logical step in the context of your overall plan and the race you're targeting. And then see, does it all fit together in a way that makes sense given some of these parameters that we've talked about? And then just don't be in a hurry about it. I think that's something we emphasize often, which is that there's no rush. Could you go from a 4-mile medium long run to an 8-mile medium long run in one cycle? Maybe. But do you have to? Do you have to? Can we just take that incremental step and consolidate gains around it, stay healthy doing it, and then the next cycle go up to 8? And then oftentimes we get in a rush on those things. So we're encouraging you to respect your starting point and take that next incremental step for the how long.
And what I hear there too is because it's you're developing a practice here with it. Because like we started earlier with the disclaimers about like why we don't do them and how it can get kicked to the side. I think that patience is for all the reasons you said, and it's also extremely important to have that patience and take that next step, because you want a practice of this. You want a habit with this. You want to know that like if Monday is my medium long run, then the majority of them that extra time's dedicated and that you have that routine around it. And if you're systematic like that throughout, one great season, then you can carry it over to another season properly when you re-ramp after recovery. Yeah. That's what you woke up as you were saying that.
Yep. And then how quickly, the thing I like to do with medium long runs, and there'll be some variation again, depending on experience, is I like to build, and you said kind of keep the up weeks, down weeks. That's great. I like to build by a mile every up week cycle. So if you're at 4, do 2 4s, take a down week, go to 3 or 2, and then go to 5 for 2 up weeks, and then cut to 3, and then go to 6 for 2 up weeks, and then cut to 4. Go to 7 for 2 up weeks, then cut to 5. And so double it up, do 2 in a row at the same level, and then take your down week and then build incrementally that way. I think for somebody who's experienced, who's already been at whatever level they're targeting, I think they can go there more directly. I still like them building in a similar fashion, but they can cut out the more experienced runner could cut out the drop and just kind of go straight there. So if you're at 5, go 5, 5, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8, 8. And then at some point along there, if you need to hold or drop, fine, but you can take that path more directly. I still like building no more than every third week, but you can get there more quickly if you have experience there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to think about, is also what that ramp looks like. And again, even in that context, you got to look at your total ramp and make sure you're not building by more than 3 or 4 miles a week for most people. Otherwise, you're going to tip the scales and break yourself along the way. So that's how long and how quickly to build the distance. Now let's talk about the age-old question, just like we had for the long run. How fast should I be doing these runs? What would you say?
Pretty dang easy. Pretty dang easy.
I would imagine they're ready for us to just say, take it easy.
They're going to think this is all we ever say, but clearly there's a reason. Have you heard, this term keeps floating around, and I don't even know who gets credit for it, but I feel like so many rogues are either saying it to me or I'm now saying it to them, but the low and slow. Did you create that?
I've not used that. No, that's
okay,
not mine.
Low and slow is my new favorite.
But that's a good one. Low and slow. Yeah, keep the easy days easy is the ultimate summary here. And so this medium long run should look like the long run, essentially. Not in that you have to have them look the same every week, because they might vary from run to run, but you're going to be going 1 to 2 minutes slower than marathon pace, or 90 seconds to 2.5 minutes slower than half marathon pace. As a rule of thumb, in warm weather conditions, it might even be slower than that. And if you have to err on the conservative side, do so. But these should be runs just like the long run, that are easy, that are conversational, where you finish feeling good and strong. And with the exception of strides, which is something we like to do at the end of our medium long runs, then you shouldn't be going fast otherwise, unless you're a really experienced runner that's starting to incorporate some of what we call extra work, which we'll talk about here in a second. But the moral of the story is go slow, slower than you think you need. And you should feel good at the end of these runs, not like you're beat up and destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about this, and I've had comments from people on reviews or on, we had some people, or at least one person on our YouTube, giving comments about how all we talk about is slow running. And, and I think that's funny, because obviously that's a component of what we preach. And I think we preach it perhaps more than other programs. But the thing about it is, why do we preach that? We preach it because it puts you in the right aerobic zone to get faster when you are intended to run easy. So it helps you optimize your easy days. But then also it allows you to put more into the quality days, to go faster, to do more intense reps, to work in the long run qualities in a way that's sustainable. So it enables the polarization, which we've talked about, that makes the program really rigorous. And so I think there's some people that want to just latch on to the fact that we talk about easy running all the time and think that that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, we're just running easy to get fast. And no, easy unlocks the ability to get more out of your quality runs, to get more out of the long run workouts when you have them, to sustain and be healthy through all the volume that we're putting you through, which is higher than most kind of standard programs. And so if you just focus on the easy or slow message, then you're wildly missing the point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And trust us, our stuff is plenty hard, but only because you balanced it appropriately.
So I've been ready in the comments, and I'm going to say luckily so. No one email me and tell me how to find them, because I'm too emotional of a guy. So I'm good not knowing them. But what it woke up in me with was this feeling of like, oh man, we were trying to help you.
Right.
It's like, we're not confused about what to do.
Right.
It's, dang, we were really trying to help you. And it also woke up a thought. I know this from the field of psychology, but it's like, you should really pay attention to what bothers you and other people. Because if it bothers you, then it's information for you about something that's likely bothering you about yourself. And so, I think people who try it, lean into it, get bigger, more explosive qualities, PR on race day, win the race instead of the training. Those people aren't the ones sending negative feedback. They're just like, thank you, coach.
Yeah.
But it's usually
Yeah.
the one that's kind of stuck in the rhythm. And I don't know who's saying what and whatever, but I'm just saying, generally speaking, I know that you should pay very, very, very close attention to what bothers you in somebody else, because it's something for you to personally work on, A, as a human. And then B, yeah, I think another reason why we do it is because it's the biggest mistake we see so frequently made.
Right.
Like, there are so many people in this rise and grind culture that are willing to, quote, push hard. So in a culture where it's saying push, 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 I mean, we might sound soft or like we're overemphasizing easy days, or relax on your medium long run or your long run until it's appropriate to put in the qualities, etc. Because we're trying to organize this in a sophisticated manner so that you get the most out of your body. Like, why put in all this work and not even get the bang for buck? Like, it's anyway. Now I'm going off, but I don't even know if you wanted that.
But you going off. Because I mean, so to me, it starts to beg the question. It's like, okay, because I'll have people say, well, I can't do an 8-mile medium long run or a 10-mile medium long run. It, quote, beats me up too much. Well, if it's beating you up too much, then you're going too fast. What if you slowed down? How good would you feel if you slowed down dramatically and fit in and manage the effort in a way that made you feel better at the end? I think about my run on Monday of this week, Memorial Day. It wasn't intended to be a medium long run day, but it was Memorial Day. I had the holiday. Kids and wife were doing other things in the morning. And so I was like, all right, I got this window of time, and I'm going to go out and run as long as I feel like. And I did 12 miles and it felt great. Easy, conversational, went down, cheered on it's now called, what was the Captech Tri is now called the Austin Super Tri. Anyway, it was cheering them on, kind of running along the course, and did a loop on Town Lake and came back and did some more in the neighborhood. But a 12-mile run that ended up taking me, I think, about an hour and 50 minutes. I was no worse for the wear the next day because I did it at a super easy, comfortable pace.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not able to get these medium long runs in a way that fits together with all your other runs without feeling tired or beat up or hurt, then you're going too fast. So why do we slow down? So we can unlock more volume, so we can unlock better quality workouts, so we can unlock the ability to do more 16 for half marathoners or 20 milers for marathoners, so that we can unlock the ability to go do long run qualities in the middle of all of that in the race specific phase and have them be additive versus tearing us down. That's why we slow down, to unlock all of that. And it's not just because, if you run slow, you're going to get faster. It's like, no. You run slow to create the engine that unlocks the ability to go fast when you need to, so that you further unlock the ability to go fast. It all fits together. It's one piece of the puzzle. And so how fast should your medium long run be? As slow as you need it to be to make it sustainable, basically, is the short answer there. All right. So we ranted a bit, but I think it's important because I think people, it's just like anything on the internet. People want to latch onto one thing and criticize the one thing and take it out of context. And so I just wanted to re-inject context into that, because we do talk about slowing down so much. And I think sometimes people hear only that. So there you go. We re-injected context. So that's the third question, I think. Next question is, okay, well, do I ever get to add speed to the medium long run? And how do I optimize it when I become more advanced? And we have this thing that we have implemented, particularly for our online kind of medium to advanced groups, which we call extra work, or basically a little bit of speed inside the medium long run. Now, it's important to note that we always recommend doing strides at the end of the medium long run, absent anything else. Do your medium long run, put your strides after. That's your one dose of strides per week. And if it doesn't fit after the medium long run because of time or whatever, then you might put it after another recovery run during the week. But strides, week in, week out, no matter what. The more advanced athlete can potentially consider incorporating some other speed development work inside the medium long run, such as 30-second pickups, 60-second pickups, 90-second pickups, which are intended to be speed development work where you're getting plenty of recovery in between so that you're getting a little bit of extra speed stimulus per week. It's a way essentially for our more advanced athletes to add that second quality during the week if they're able and ready.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's there, and we incorporate it for some of our athletes that are more experienced. But I want to emphasize that you really only get to do that once you've optimized the distance of your medium long run and really the miles per week of your week. And you've spent time hanging out there, and you're now trying to find the smaller margins of improvement as you start to reach the edges of your genetic potential. And so this is, I'll call it advanced kind of work, but it's, and I don't want people to think of advanced in a sense of you have to be a certain pace or you have to be, you have to look a certain way or be at a certain kind of part of the pack on race day. No. It's not about that at all. It's more about, have you earned the right to add that to your equation? And by the way, even those that have earned the right to and are more advanced, maybe they choose still not to because they're trying to optimize other things. So I do want to point out that there is potentially a place for that experienced advanced runner to add more speed work into their medium long run, but that is few and far between typically in our programming and should be done carefully.
Yeah. I gave you a big emphasis when you said advanced because in my head, the word that was sitting there right as you talked was protocol advancement or progression, like back to that idea of progression overload. It's like if you've done 6-6, 7-7, 8-8, 9-9, 10-10, and you know you're holding at 10 and maximizing at 10 and you're experienced and you're running 50-mile weeks and you usually peak out there, it's like you've been at it for a while, then it's like, okay, well, instead of just holding at 10 in perpetuity till the season's over, that's like protocol advancement. Now you can add in your extra work. But usually that's not going to happen all in one season. That's like season over season. You've put in your work. You know that, like you said, you maximized the volume itself. Like if you know you're going to cap at 12 or you know you're going to cap at 10 and you know how controlled and easy and rhythmic that is, then it's like, okay, well, I need another protocol advance. That's when you tuck it in. You see it as like, just like the 6 went to the 7, that's such simple, basic math that it gets it using terms like that's protocol advancement doesn't sound right there, but it is. It's stimulus. 6 miles is a stimulus and 7 is more of a stimulus than is 6. So you're progressing the overload. This is another way too. Like once you've reached that volume and you know where you're at, then you've quote earned the right to add it in.
Yep. And then that's where we'll sprinkle it in often in the form of, as we just said, pickups where you're kind of loosely picking it up based on how you feel. Pickup, for those that don't know that vernacular in our world, I think there's to me, it's intentionally vague, intentionally loose, because that's the way it's supposed to be executed. And the way I describe appropriate execution of a pickup is, 1, are you picking up the pace faster than easy run? Which means by 1 second, at least. Often it's faster than that. Are you ideally, as you progress through the pickups, getting faster as you go? So you're progressing through the pickups as your body warms into them. If you're doing, for example, 8 times 30 seconds fast, your last 30-second interval is going to be faster than your first, if you're doing it and managing it the right way. And then the third variable that I want for a pickup is that it's in control always. So you're never out of control. You're never getting sloppy with your form or getting out of control, tired from a heart rate perspective, because you've got plenty of recovery in between. So it's pick it up a little faster than easy run, flexing potentially as fast as maybe 5K, 3K pace for shorter pickups. It's progressive, meaning you're progressing as you go through them. And third, it's in control. And that might result in paces on a given day that might vary wildly. And that's okay. That's the point. We want the body to kind of dictate it with those loose parameters as the keys to success. And so it's a way to incorporate something that feels fast without being too pedantic about it or too what's the right word? Bureaucratic, I guess might be the word, because then you start to lose the purpose.
Yeah.
So that's extra work. Any final notes on that?
No, because I think you explained that well. I was thinking of how you explain that we always include strides, and I don't want that to be understated either. It's like, again, for those that maybe run their medium long runs too fast, if you take time with that, we explained that the purpose of the medium long run is a secondary aerobic stimulus, and you're getting 2 of those a week, and it's really important for that reason. And so it's like, well, you don't want to throw shade at that, and then look at the other side of the equation. The purpose of strides is recruiting fast twitch fibers, and you're doing it after your medium long run, so you're doing it on tired legs. And so all we're doing there is we're breaking apart the 2 very, very valuable components. I just don't want that to be understated either. You know, like
right.
Strides are, it's easy because it's such common language, like information wise, it doesn't sound all that important. You're like, I know that, I know strides, medium long run strides, so I better just pick up my medium long run. But I'm like, there's incredible bang for buck right there, just sitting right there. That's like, because it's not new and because you can't put sexy marketing around it, doesn't mean it's trivial. Right? That's one of those tried and true, like, don't neglect sleep, don't neglect water, don't neglect easy and medium long runs with some strides. Like there's some simple things that are really, really important.
Bread and butter indeed. All right. So 2 kind of tactical questions as we close out this conversation on the medium long run. Some people might ask, well, what if I'm short on time? What if I'm short on time? And I think this might kind of have 2 sub questions. One would be if I'm short on time all the time. Another is if I'm short on time in one given week because my routine shifted or whatever it might be. And those might be 2 different questions completely. I think this also dovetails a little bit with our last question, but we'll start with the first kind of sub question there, which is what if I'm short on time all the time, meaning I'm having trouble finding a place for my medium long run during the week? What would you tell that person?
There's 2 parts to me because it's either, this isn't necessarily tough love. Like they'll either have to find some time if this is of high value, or it's the other side of the equation, and that's kind of acceptance of your schedule. And I think the schedule is often one of the biggest limiters here with medium long run. So either of those paths could be right depending on the person. It's sort of like, one, check like how committed you are, and if you know you're trying your best and you're trying to give it your all and you're just cramped, because some people have very busy lives and a lot of responsibilities, and I see responsibility as a good thing. It's a good thing. So I get it. And so if you can't make others though need to be checked. It's like, are you really trying your best? Like I'll pick on myself. It's like sure. When I add up my Netflix time, looking back on a week, I'm like, I had the time. You know what I mean? I know what I devoted there. Or if you use your phone to look when you were on social or whatever. I'm just trying to make up examples now. But what I would do is I would say if someone is really strapped for time, so if they need the kick in the butt, then hey, ask yourself the hard question: am I trying my best? Am I really prioritizing this and building a routine such that it can happen? If it's the opposite, you're like, high responsibility, time is not your own. In fact, you probably run because you're like, that's my only quiet free time I get to myself. Like, okay, well then for that person, I want to encourage them with the salvage everything attitude of like, get what you can and humbly accept that that's what you can give to it. And if there's breaks in your schedule that might occur in the future, it's like, hold that, because if, let's say aspirationally, you know you're physically capable of getting to 12 and you want to get to 12, but it's like this season you got a lot of 8s, but only 1 above 8. Look back on that. Don't beat yourself up. Accept that and say, cool, if I can get 2 10s next season, that's going to be a big, big win while matching the same number of 8s. It's like that alone could be a simple way to review a season and add a progression the next time, assuming that the schedule unlocks. But some people may be capped, and it's like,
yep. Yeah, if you're capped, you're capped, you know, but I do think you're right in that you, in those situations, have to perhaps adjust expectations about the outcomes if you're not able to do all of the components of the work. And then the question is, what can I do? And you do the most that you can within reason, fit that in every week, because while, you know, an 8 mile medium long run might be better than a 6 and a 10 might be better than an 8, if you can do 8 consistently versus 10, then that's what you can do. And it's going to have to be as good as it can be. And so do what you can. And then, as you said, over time, try to aspire for more. I think there's also places where you could potentially be creative. This is where I think especially our virtual groups are particularly inspiring. They find creative ways of fitting this stuff in. Some people run commuting, for example. It's like, okay, well, I'll just run to work if I have the ability to shower and change and do all those things there. And that's one way I can get more time on my feet on a given day. Or there might be other ways, or it might just be simply about waking up a little bit earlier, going to bed a little bit earlier as well. And so get creative as you can, but I think the emphasis on look at that over time is really important. Give yourself grace in the short term, do what you can, and then over time try to unlock more time, because you will be limited ultimately in the aerobic capacity you can build, the size of the engine that you can build, if you're not able to find more time in your schedule. Then the other part of this question, which is, well, what if it's 1 week and things are just challenging in this week? What can I do? And then, for that, I always go back to the age old, something is better than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Do what you can. If you can only get 7 on a day where you had planned 10, you get 7 in. And then the next week you go back up, and don't worry about it. One run isn't going to derail a training cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if it's one given week, you do what you can and you move on to the next. And the most important thing I think with that is that you maintain the integrity of the sequence of the runs. Some people will say, well, I missed my Monday medium long run for whatever reason. I've got a Wednesday quality, so I'm just going to make it up on Tuesday. And the answer there is no, don't do that. That is not optimal. What we want to do there is just say, hey, I missed it. That's fine. There's no such thing as a perfect cycle. Maybe I'll run Tuesday, but I'm going to do 5 instead of 10, and I'm going to go into my quality with all the tools available to me versus trying to squeeze it back to back, because injuries happen when we start stacking things together too closely. Mm-hmm. And so that's the one thing not to do. Now, if you could slide your whole week and you go from, instead of Monday, Wednesday or medium long run and quality, to then a Tuesday medium long run, Wednesday short run, Thursday quality, and then that fits with whatever you have for your long run on the weekend, fine. Slide the whole week. But don't ever compromise that spacing that we talked about earlier. Okay, so that's that. Then another question here that people get to, which is kind of related to that last one, is what about thinking about it in terms of time versus miles? And I think this is a good trick, especially in summer training, to prevent yourself from getting too greedy with pace when you're trying to hit a certain distance, but you have to slow down in a summer run in order to make the effort be easy enough, but then suddenly you're cramped on time to get it done. And so the question becomes, if I'm doing 10 miles, for example, but I only have 90 minutes on a Monday, but in the summer I need to slow down to 9:30s instead of 9-minute miles, what do? Do I shorten the run? Do I speed up the pace and go harder than I should in order to fit it in those 90 and get the 10 that I had promised myself? What do I do when I'm making those trade-offs?
That's where our guiding principles lead us. And so if we started with we want the aerobic benefit, we definitely don't speed up. We know what zone to stay in. So yeah, flip to time. And again, back to you said something's better than nothing, or salvage everything. It's like you keep the pace the same, and you flip to time, and then you maximize the time. If your time's limited, it's limited. And what's interesting is that, yes, in the summer, I think that's become a really helpful protocol for people who got really into their schedules. Let's say when the weather was great, and they did run 9-minute easy, so their 10-mile medium long run was always right at 90 minutes, and they built a routine around it. Well, then going into the summer, remaining at 90 minutes is not coming backwards. Your pace is slower, and so the volume goes down, yes, but remember, duration is a way to look at it as well. And because of most scientific studies are done with some kind of stressor across time in a lab, and what the body did in that time frame, I'm I don't have any issue jumping over to time, because it's also a helpful tool when I think some people will think it, and there is a part of me that's like always trying to be positive. On Clifton Strengths Finder, my second top strength is positivity. So I know I'm giving that disclaimer, but I don't just say this for positive reasons or positive ways of looking at things. Rather, I do believe that duration is a valuable component. So time as your medium long run target. And so those that do start slowing down and realize that it took longer, instead of just saying like, so you have the summer adjustment to make life easy, but also just in general, where it's like, dang, I was a little bit slower today, so my medium long run took an hour 45 instead of an hour 30. And they're really in their head beating themselves up about the pace difference. Like, oh, look how slow my pace is. And I'm like, no, you got 15 more minutes on your feet. And we do know the value of extra time on your feet. So I'm not just saying that to be positive. I'm like, you got good actual physiological stimulus by having to be out there longer. So that's a long way of saying I'm really into flipping over to time if needed.
Yeah, if you need to do it from a slower pace perspective because of the summer, or if you just need to do it to fit in your routine so that you're not worried about distance, and you've got 90 minutes to get a medium longer in and give them a block of time, it's like, okay, do it. 90 minutes at the right effort, let the miles be what the miles are going to be. Mm-hmm. And it's totally fine. So that is a way to structure things that might be helpful for some people, is just flipping it over. And I think particularly when there's some sort of pressure on pace for whatever reason, we would always rather you slow down, go the right effort, flip to time so you're not worried about distance, than go fast just so you can hit a certain amount of mileage in the time that you have. Because as you said, then you're defeating the purpose of the day, mm-hmm. and you're stressing your body in ways that you shouldn't. So always keep the effort right in order to get the benefits of the medium long run. And if that means flipping to time versus distance, then do it. And this is where, just like with everything we talk about, yes, there are rules of thumb. There are ways to think about it, as in, I want to run as many miles as I can, as long as I can recover from those miles. And that's probably more miles than you think. So there's going to be some people that are hung up on, but that'll mean fewer miles. And isn't that not in line with what you guys want? You want me to be doing more miles? And the answer is no. We want you to be doing the miles given the right purpose. Mm-hmm. Miles for the sake of miles, especially when you step outside of the purpose intended, is junk, mm-hmm. is a waste of time. So don't get trapped in this miles or mileage is the only thing that matters. Again, that's taking our miles matter point out of context. Mm-hmm. So there you go. Flip to time if needed. Okay, so we'll wrap it here, start to close out. Want to emphasize just the importance of this medium long run, and it might not be on the radar for most people because long run and qualities are so important. But think of this truly as the third leg of that stool, the other key run during the week that you need to fit in around your recovery runs. And if you can build the medium long run over time, it's going to be a really, really formative way to go chase fitness goals. So consider what that means for you. Any final thoughts?
I think that's a great way to summarize it.
All right. Then let's wrap it here. A couple of reminders. One is that every Friday, 2 p.m. Central, we have our Rogue Q&A on the @RogueRunning Instagram. You can come see James and I answering questions ad hoc as they come in on these Friday afternoons at 2 p.m. Central. We always get great questions. We spend about 30 minutes. So if you want to just listen and see what questions we get, if we have questions to ask about this topic or about your own training, that's a good place for it. The other reminder is that we're in the starting phases of fall training for races in September, October, November, December. And this is a good time to join us in person in Dallas or Austin or virtually from wherever you might be. All of that info on our training programs are at our website, roguerunning.com, or you can just email us, coaching@roguerunning.com, and we'll get you pointed in the right direction. With that, we'll wrap it. Go enjoy your medium long runs, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.